Sometimes we're live. I think we're live. It's saying preparing. Never entirely sure until I see it. All right. We should
We're
be live now.
live.
Oh, there we
I
go.
think we're live. It's saying
All right.
preparing.
I'm going to mute that. So, hello, everybody. My name is Scott Skiba. I'm the Executive Artistic Director for Cleveland Opera Theater. Thank you for joining us today on Page to Stage, our weekly series where we look at all different aspects of the process of bringing work from the page to the stage. Now, we've talked with various designers, technical directors, lighting designers, scenic design, costume design, projection design. Next week, we'll chat about criticism, critics and their role in the process. Today, we have with us author and playwright Calvin A. Ramsey. So, Calvin, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. It's taken us a while to get this connected, but I'm glad we're finally there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just double checking the tech here to make sure we're good. Okay, this should have us both there now. Okay, good. So Calvin, where are you these days?
Well, I'm back in New York City, and currently I'm on 42nd Street, right behind the main branch of the New York Public Library. This is a outdoor library that they set up every summer, and they have books and magazines, and just a good place to read. Usually there's an attendant here. I guess he comes on a little later and kind of keep the peace, so things don't get too far out of hand.
Nice, nice. So where were you before? I know you've been back in New York for about a week. So you were out of town?
Yeah, I was in Baltimore for 5 months. My younger brother came up and rescued me. He felt like I needed to get out of New York during the height of the virus that was here in late March, early April. So I was down there for about 5 months and gained a little weight because I couldn't really get around that much, but got some work done in spite of it, in spite of it all. And while I was in Maryland, my home state, I watched a lot of public television, and I fell in love with my home state all over again. I born there, left when I was 9. My father was a steel worker. His union went on strike, and he moved us down to his hometown in North Carolina, a little town called Roxborough, about 30 miles from Durham, about 40 miles from Chapel Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I grew up. So I had 2 childhoods. One was urban setting, and the other was farm life, working with livestock and working in tobacco and all of that. So it made me, I think, quite versatile.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing like how all these experiences just come into play. So and enrich everything we're doing. So you mentioned Maryland. Maybe I'll go a little out of order. I mean, we're going to talk about for those who don't know, Calvin and I have been in touch for many years, maybe 4 or 5, something like that. When
Yeah.
a colleague from Oberlin, friend and colleague, Rhiannon Giddens, amazing artist and musician, she posted about the Green Book and
Hmm.
specifically about Calvin's play, The Green Book. And I didn't know about it previously, and I thought, wow, this would make a tremendous opera. So, reached out to Calvin, and that was before the movie, the movie Green Book
Sure.
based movie came out, and so it's gotten more prominence. But Calvin's got several works based on that, so we'll unpack that. But your time in Maryland led you to a recent project that's very very poignant, very relevant with what's happening today. So you want to talk a little bit about that and how that came to be?
Yes, with Black Lives Matter and what's going on in the streets, the young people and some older people out there protesting for a better society, uh, and calling attention to a lot of ills that have been going on for quite a while. So while I was in Maryland, I was watching MSNBC, and this gentleman came on, Michael Steele, who Republican, former attorney, former, I guess he was deputy mayor, and I'm sorry, deputy governor, that's not the term for his title. I guess he was the number 2 person below the governor of the state. And he mentioned the state song that no one sings. They just sing the title, My Maryland, and then they just go off until the music takes over. And I was curious about that. So why are they not singing the state song? So I Googled it and looked at the lyrics. And the lyrics were really about 1861 when the song was written and released, to the melody of O Tannenbaum, the German holiday song. And so, but the words were really about Maryland succeeding to the Confederacy. At least that's what the author of those words wanted Maryland to do, and they did not do that, even though they never joined the Union. I mean, they never joined the Confederacy, but they had a lot of Southern sympathies. And so this author who penned these words was urging Maryland to do that. And there were references to Abraham Lincoln, calling him a few names, and there was a term in that song, death to all tyrants, which is the same thing John Wilkes Booth said when he jumped from the balcony at the Ford Theater after shooting President Lincoln. So this was 4 years before that assassination, but the sentiment was there. And I just felt like Maryland deserved something a little better. The melody was wonderful, but I said, let me see if I can't do something. And so I penned some words and been working on it for about almost 2 weeks now with a wonderful composer. And he just texted me a few minutes ago saying the song is done. He'd been up since 5 o'clock this morning, him and his wife, with the final touches on it. And so he's going to send it to me tonight. And so I'll send it to you so you can hear it.
Great.
So that was
great.
really
Yeah,
like a love letter.
that'd be great. And just so we give them a shout
a
out
love
here.
letter to the state of Maryland. And
oh, go ahead.
yeah, Ray Nacaro is his name. He teaches at the Brooklyn Academy of Music.
Awesome.
He teaches there. Wife's a wonderful singer. And we've been doing all this by technology. He was referred to me by a good friend of mine who taught at Boys High School. He taught violin and viola, Don Groton. And Don mentioned Ray to me, and I contacted Ray, and we hit it off. It's really, really good. And we've been working on this seemed like a long time, but it's only been probably about 2 weeks.
Yeah, I
I'll make
remember
sure
when
you get
called.
an earful once he sends me. Yeah, and so I just felt like the state of Maryland deserves better. My family, like 4th generation of Marylanders, and I know my father, his brothers, my uncles, they all came up from the South looking for a better life, not a lot of formal education, and they found work in the steel mills. And from those steel mills, they were able to buy homes, cars, and send their children to college. And so it was really, it was the promised land. I mean, it wasn't perfect. They ran into some difficulties, I'm quite sure, at the steel mills and not being able to advance like they wanted to, but still, it was a better life than what they had on the farm. And so I felt like, out of respect for my elders and what they, accomplished in the state of Maryland and what Maryland afforded them, a better life, that they needed that we all needed a better state song for everyone. And so that's how this whole thing came about.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I can't wait to get the song and check it out, and we'll put it on here. We'll have you back on again. I know we'll have you back when we're chatting more about Ruth and the Green Book. But we'll we'll do something with it, maybe coordinate a performance or something like that. So thanks for creating that, and hopefully it gets some traction and performance. So when
it seems like sometimes out of tragedy, good things come about. I in 2001, right before 9/11, a friend of mine's son was killed in a car accident outside of Atlanta, and I went to the funeral. And I was in the backyard, and this family was originally out of New York, and the grandfather came down from New York. It was all in the backyard. After the service, the young man was killed. Was little Tony. He was 18 years of age, And so the grandfather of little Tony on his mother's side looked right at me and said, my first time in the Deep South, and I was looking for a green book. And I said, what's a green book? And that's how the green book came to me.
Mm-hmm.
I was, at the time I was on the advisory board at Emory University. I went over there. They didn't have anything on the green book and knew very little about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I went over to Morehouse, their youth center, to the Woodruff Library, and the librarian there made 2 copies of 2 different years of green books and gave me those copies. And that's how this whole thing started. And so in my children's book, Ruth in the Green Book, on the dedication page, the book is dedicated to little Tony, the young man who was killed in a car accident. And little Tony's mother, who still lives in Atlanta, as well as little Tony's father, who's Big Tony. The mother has taken the book around to different schools to present the story and to talk about the Green Book, Ruth in the Green Book, and also her son, who I knew, who was an outstanding young man. And so that's how it came to me. So out of that tragedy, I discovered what the Green Book was all about, and the gentleman that told me the story, his father was a mailman. Little Tony's grandfather's father was a mailman who worked on the first Green Book with Mr. Green. So there you have it.
So not too many degrees of separation.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
Not too many. Now you mentioned that you hadn't heard of it, which to me is in some ways really good that you didn't need to have heard of it. But for those who maybe tuning in don't know a lot about it, I mean, what is it? Why is it important that we know about it? What can it help us make sure doesn't happen? How can it help us grow and improve?
Yeah. Well, the reason I didn't know about it because I grew up in a farm area, and no one was taking vacations or using the book. During the summer and spring, you were in the field.
Mm-hmm.
You were getting the land ready for the planting. Then later on, you were harvesting the crops. So people I was around really weren't traveling. If they did go somewhere, they would go from maybe North Carolina to Baltimore, which they could get there in 3 or 4 hours, even back then before the interstate highways. And so they weren't really, needing that to stay overnight. But people who really, really were traveling a lot, people were part of the Great Migration. People who were leaving the Southland and leaving areas of the East Coast, going to the West Coast, and the professional class of Black people who had gone to college and who were involved in associations and graduations and homecomings and all of that. They were really out there. And the first Blacks who were hired by corporations, they had an expense account but no place to stay. So they were just out there. But these same people who were college educated, they stayed with families who were not college educated because the bulk of the Green Book listings were blue collar families. And a lot of these families did not have telephones in their home. So once that mail carrier asked them and showed them the Green Book, and that's where it really started from. Victor Green was a mailman, and in these towns, there's always, for the most part, one Black mail carrier. This was before they had women like today delivering the mail. They were all men back then. And the Green Book started in 1936. So way before any civil rights action was approved of. So these mailmen who were probably the most revered members of their community in these towns, and they were screen people. They knew who home could accommodate travelers, and they would ask, certain people where a traveler could come and be safe. So they were the screening process, and plus it was an honor to be in the Green Book, to be listed. And if you ever looked inside of a Green Book, you will see that the listings were always in the woman's name. It was never Mr. Brown's home. It was always Mrs. Brown, because she made that decision. I guess I'm pretty sure she told her husband when she came home from work uh, what she had done, because you never knew when the traveler was going to show up.
Hmm.
By not having any way of the traveler calling them or notifying them, once you were in that book, you were in that book. And so that's was the backbone. You know, it was really uh, as though the black community was just one big family.
Hmm.
Uh, and it wasn't really a money-making venture. Most of these people didn't charge anything, but these travelers would leave something on the dresser or under the pillow to show their gratitude. And this was before a lot of laws were passed. The civil rights leaders, a lot of them were ministers. They had their own sort of network. Ministers knew other ministers throughout the country, but still, there were times when that was not something they could do, and they relied on the Green Book.
Hmm.
And the Green Book was Victor Green was a mailman from 1913 to 1960. Uh, but while him, but while him delivering the mail every day, you know, he lived in Harlem, but he went over to New Jersey and Hackensack. That was his route. So he got up every morning, went over by, the bridge, delivered the mail. But his wife ran the Green Book. She was really the editor with an all-female staff. She had an all-female staff, the first all-female staff that ran a travel publication.
Hmm.
Uh, Not Travel and Leisure, but a travel publication. This is way before Ebony, way before Essence. This was a yearly publication, and it would take them a year to, gather in, all the material. And then later on, they started getting advertising in the Green Book, started paying for itself. And so, Victor Victor Hugo Green is his full name, and his wife was Alma Duke Green out of Richmond, Virginia. Uh, Victor had an eighth grade education. Alma had a 10th grade education, and but they worked as a team. They didn't have children. This was their baby, and it was just one of those things that they did for 30 some years. And then once the Civil Rights Act was passed, it was no longer needed. Some folks felt like it was still needed, and maybe even still needed today. Uh, but it kind of fell through the cracks of history,
Hmm.
and no one was talking about it. I was a lone voice 20 years ago talking about the Green Book, and now it's a cottage industry. I just read online yesterday that a young gentleman has started a thing called the Spicy Green Book. It's a website where people can go online and see which black restaurants have food for sale throughout the country. And
Hmm.
so there's other businesses that are, that are being part of this whole Green Book wave. And the movie
Right.
didn't hurt. Some people didn't like the movie, but I thought the movie was needed. Now people don't, when I talk to folks, I don't have to explain what the Green Book is all about. They
Hmm.
kind of get an idea. Even though the movie didn't go into any great detail, it still kind of put it out there.
Yeah.
Put it out there.
Yeah. Now there's a little bit of a Cleveland connection to the
Yeah.
Green Book we had talked about before. So since we're developing this project here in Cleveland with Cleveland Opera Theater, can you outline that just a little bit, the Cleveland connection?
Sure. This is something that is not really, well known. It's one of those, not a side story, but it's part of the whole overall story. Uh, Cleveland, I guess, was part of, a lot of New Englanders moved out to Cleveland, which was considered the frontier, the Western Reserve, as they, call it, and I guess they still do in a lot of ways. So a lot of abolitionists moved out there, during this period, and settled. The Congregationalist ministers and Unitarian ministers and Quakers. So it was throughout New England. I mean, throughout Ohio. And so one particular family, the Spellman family, Minister Spellman was a congregational minister. He moved out to the Ohio Reserve to start a church, and him and his wife and his two daughters. One of his daughters ended up meeting a young man. Uh, they were taking business classes together. because neither one of them really could afford to go to college at the time, even though Alma eventually got her degree to teach. They became friends and later married. But the Spelmans were also abolitionists, and their home was a part of the Underground Railroad. And uh, and a young man that the young man that not Alma married, but the young man that Laura married was John D. Rockefeller Sr. And through her efforts and his efforts, they were able to do something wonderful in Atlanta, and that was to help fund a black college there for women that still exists to this day, Spelman College. If you go on campus, you will see uh, Minister Spelman's portrait in the administration hall, his wife's portrait, uh, Laura, and the Performing Arts Center is called the Rockefeller Performing Arts Center. And the church on campus called Sister Chapel. I always thought it was named after all the sisters that went to Spelman, but really it's after Laura and Lucy, the two daughters of the of Minister Spelman. And through Rockefeller efforts, they started a program to train black men to run their own station, their own service stations. Wynton Marsalis' grandfather had a hotel and a service station in New Orleans. And so when black folks traveled, they looked out for the Esso station. Now it's ExxonMobil, but back then they looked out for the Esso station. The Esso sold the Green Book in their stands out in front of the office, in front of the pumps. And so it was a safe haven because you just never knew what you might encounter on the road. A minor incident could turn into a life-threatening situation. And so to travel, blacks had to do all kinds of things to stay safe. I know my family would always leave early in the morning, 2, 3, 4 in the morning while it was still dark. That way, if you travel, people really can't see in the car just who is traveling. At the time, as a child, we did not know that. We thought we just left early to get an early start on the day. But there was all kinds of things families would do to protect the children. The women would always have a big picnic basket of food, so we wouldn't have to stop anywhere. And so the children thought that was just an adventure, but really it was to keep us out of harm's way. And then there was rest stops where you would go into the woods. And even for a young person, that was still considered somewhat of an adventure. It was out of the norm. Mm-hmm. So all these things were never discussed. And when people traveled back and to and fro, they would come to the house and they never talked about the road, what they encountered. It was always joyous to see them. They were coming back for weddings and coming back for funerals, graduations, just different types of celebrations. And some would come back to share their new wealth. They went up north and got a good union job, and they would come back and recruit other family members to come up with them, mm-hmm. to stay with them until they got on their feet and get their own place. So a lot of that was going on. Mm-hmm. So, and that's when the farms in the South started losing a lot of their, labor, because people, the farmers could not compete with that steady union job, that steady pay. Mm-hmm. And so, and that's what I remember seeing relatives come back from up north, nice cars, well dressed, a cooler full of soda pop, all kind of things in the trunk of the car. It was almost like a holiday. Mm-hmm. They weren't coming back to show off or gloat. They were coming back just to say, through my hard work and effort, this was what I was able to do. But it all started here on these farms, mm-hmm. where they acquired that work ethic. And actually the city jobs were quite easy, mm-hmm. Compared to what they were used to.
Yeah, compared to the manual labor you used to do, and definitely.
Exactly. And, home ownership and sending their children to school and seeing the children graduate from high school, and then a great deal of them going on to college. So it was almost like something their parents or grandparents could probably never even dream of such things happening, to their family members. but it happened. And thanks to the Green Book, it made it a lot easier because some people went further than just 200 or 300 miles. They went further out. They
Hmm.
went to Chicago. They went to parts of Ohio, to those tire factories and the jobs that were up there. And so it was, you know, needed. And Victor Green, being a New Yorker from Harlem, he saw how bad it was when he was taking his wife down to Richmond. And he came back and said, I got to do something about this. He
Hmm.
had a Jewish friend, uh, and the Jewish friend told him that the Jewish community had their own travel book,
Hmm.
but their book dealt more with keeping kosher while they were on the road.
Hmm.
But that gave him the idea of, starting something. And there was a black union called the National Association of Postal and Federal Employees that was started in 1913, Lookout Mountain, Tennessee, by black mail clerks on the train, because blacks could not join the AFL or the CIO during this period. Not until John Kennedy, President Kennedy, signed an executive order saying these unions cannot discriminate if they are in the federal government. But before then, blacks could not join those unions. So they started their own. And that's where the field force, Victor Green, getting men to, solicit addresses from the housewives.
Hmm.
And so it was that that friendship. Just like today, your mailman or mail carrier know more about you than anyone else in the community. They know what kind
They,
of mail you're getting,
they
what kind
see
of mail
everything
maybe you
coming
should
and
not be
going,
getting,
right?
all of that.
They see they know all the details. Well,
Oh,
it's,
sure.
I mean, it,
And this,
go ahead.
and this was the same way. And back then, the mailman really, a lot of cases, only delivered mail in the black parts of town.
Mhm.
Uh, a lot of the clerks were white, and they really didn't want to be out there. The weather, that old saying, through rain, snow, sleet, or hail, the mail must go through. And so that was grunt work. Being a mail carrier with that big leather bag back in those days was really like being like a Marine. It was, today they have the things they can roll and have cars and whatnot, but it was, but it was a federal job, and it was a wonderful job. And Victor Green was able to pass the civil service exam to become a mail carrier
Hmm.
with his eighth grade education. So that was someone who was determined. And I think of Victor Green's parents. They named him Victor Hugo. That
Yeah,
says a lot about his parents as well.
it does. It does. It does.
Yeah,
Oh man, you're a wealth of information about this, and it's to me it's at the same time it's fascinating, it's inspiring um, that Victor Green and his wife were able to put this together. It's
yeah,
very it's terrible and it's tragic and it's disheartening that it was necessary. And I think in many ways, like you said, um, some people say they still feel it is necessary, and we
yeah.
see a lot of horrible things happen. So I hope that I hope we can bring some more awareness and that we can help continue to be part of the change because it's terrible and it's not something that should ever have to exist. But we'll.
Well, you think about today, the transgender community uh, uh, are worried when they travel. The gay community, if they have, symbols on their cars that say that they are gay, uh, they travel and they're worried about being harmed. And so they have networks now for themselves when they travel, the same as the transgender community. I met a lady about 2 years ago. I did a talk at one of these prestigious schools in New York, uh, and her child attends there, one of these schools at a tuition about $40,000 a year. And so she was telling me when her husband got this job in New York, they had to drive cross country. He flew out first, and she had to bring the car out. And she's an Asian lady, and she said she was scared to drive cross country. But I never thought that that would be a factor for her or her people. But she said it is a factor. I just never thought about that, you know. And so there's enough of fear and being folks being uncomfortable to go around. So that's why we all have to kind of be a little more understanding of each other, and don't think any one group has it made uh, where there's no issues.
Right.
When I go to schools, I talk to children and I ask them about the other forms of discrimination. Uh, and people mention body size, sexual orientation, origin of birth, uh, uh, physical ability. So all, all those things come up, you know. And I talk to some black students sometimes. I say, do you think white kids have it made? And a lot of times, oh yeah, they got it made. They have no problems whatsoever. Then I bring up these other issues that what they're going through. So I try to give everybody a chance to see things through someone else's eyes,
Hmm.
because no group has it totally made. You know, we all deal with issues and things.
Right.
Some are more on the surface, and some are a little deeper. And that's what I try to do with Ruth in the Green Book. I try to open it up. At the end of the book, Ruth is standing in a room at a black hotel in Birmingham, Alabama, and she's having these thoughts how she can be a better person, more understanding of others. And that's what that whole road trip was to her. And that's what I try to relay at the end of my talk when I go to these schools. And
Hmm.
that's hopefully what we would do when we do when we do the piece in Cleveland. Uh,
Absolutely. I mean, that's the message we want is,
yeah,
caring and understanding and love and compassion and being, being a human race and being supportive and understanding of everyone. And, and we could use a lot more of that now, I
oh
think.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, definitely. I in my play, which is called The Green Book, which is a story of a family whose home is a tourist home. That's what they would call a tourist home. And I have a Jewish Holocaust survivor uh, staying over at a black home, and that caused a lot of tension within the house, not with the family members that own the home, but some other travelers that are staying there. But he's from Buchenwald. He's a survivor of Buchenwald. And I wanted to bring that into the mix. And this is 1954. And he's traveling across country to see a friend of his who's on his deathbed, a
Hmm.
black soldier who he met in Buchenwald. Uh, and he's going out there to see him. But I wanted to bring those two communities on stage together.
Yeah.
This is in the 50s. And a lot of people in the 50s, even today, may not have ever had a white person stay in their home or a black person stay in their home. So I want to have that on stage to show what that felt like. But he's in the house all by himself, and he's looking through books to find something to read because the family has gone out to a lecture, and the gentleman, the military people have left already. They're traveling, and the daughter is also at the lecture, but he's there by himself.
Yeah.
And but I wanted to
Yeah.
show that. And this
What's
was in the 50s,
it's
and
very
so
powerful.
yeah, and so I wanted the two cultures to come together and to show how blacks and Jewish people work together during the height of the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
Because a lot of young people are not aware of that. So I
Yeah.
wanted to show that, have that discussed in a play. And I was, some people said, why do you have a Jewish character in your a black play? I said, well, it's really a human rights play. And it's something for everybody to learn from. And a young lady in the house who's a high school uh, senior who's about to go to college in another year, uh, this is really an education for her.
Hmm.
And this is 54. This is during the time of the Birmingham bus boycott. And that's in the background on the news, on the radio, in the home. And Dr. Du Bois is coming to town to give a lecture. So all this is going on in this one little community, Jefferson City, Missouri. But I want to have all that going on, we did that play down in Houston, and and it's been in Chicago, Atlanta, been on Yale's campus, and now we're getting ready to do it at Princeton. That's something I wanted to just show the different people on stage at the same time.
Absolutely. Well, Calvin, thank you for the work that you're doing to not only address civil rights, but make it something that's human and understandable and just transcends boundaries that hopefully helps us get a broader understanding. Before we sign off here, wanted to bring up this is our second Zoom. We were actually supposed to bring you to Cleveland in January. We had some school
Right,
visits
right,
and things
right.
set up. Somebody wanted to throw you a major fundraiser, so there were some travel things. There's a couple of
Yeah,
medical things
yeah.
too. But so we
So maybe
zoomed you
so
in.
what?
We were just ahead of the curve, right? Now it's all we can do. So we were just kind of
Right, 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 right.
forward thinking and
So
happy to.
I'm lining up. Yeah, so we can do that once. Are you guys going to start back up in September, or yet, or are you not quite
Yeah, I
sure?
mean,
Or
all of our programming currently is all digital. Our 2021 season is virtual, so
okay,
everything we're delivering is online. You can enjoy it anywhere you feel safe. This series is part of that. Just a daily part of our Opera for All initiative, just to make opera available to families and cover a lot of different topics.
yeah,
So yeah, we'll
yeah.
we'll, we'll find a
So
way.
are you back in Ohio, or are you still in Pennsylvania?
I'm in Cleveland currently. Yeah, downtown in the apartment,
Oh,
and
you back? You back? Okay, okay.
yeah, we're here for a little while, and then we'll kind of be back and forth between here in Central PA, where my wife lives. But
Yeah.
I really appreciate you taking time to come on today. Looks like a
Hey,
bright
thanks for
sunny day
having me. Thanks
there.
for having me.
All right, well, I look forward to continuing, and I'm sure we'll
Yeah,
have you
yeah.
back on
It's
again.
yeah.
All right, well, I look forward to receiving the song.
Okay,
Get that
okay.
going, and then we'll see what more we can do this
Yeah,
year
yeah.
as well with Ruth and the Green Book. All right, man. Well, thank you
Sounds
very
wonderful.
much,
And by the
Cal.
way, I'm researching.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
absolutely. Yeah, no, you were saying? Go ahead. I'm gonna cut you off there.
Oh yeah. The last thing is I'm doing I'm researching a new play about someone from your neck of the woods in Ohio, uh, John Brown.
All
Thought I'd
right.
share that with you.
All cool. Well, we'll have to. That's a good teaser. We'll have to do another
Yeah, yeah.
segment on that. All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning
Okay.
in. Gonna sign off the YouTube here, and thanks for joining. Be sure to check us out every day during the noon hour for the Opera 101, Page to Stage, and Maestro's Corner. And hope everybody's staying safe. Have a great day. We'll see you next week. We'll have Mike Talene, critic and co-founder of Cleveland Classical, join us to talk about the role of a critic in the process of bringing works from the page to the stage. So thanks again, Calvin. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you next week.